I just want to make this video real quick addressing this issue with these J32, J35 engines. There's some others, I'll pop them up. But the issue is with this, mainly with this V-tec solenoid here. They call them, there, I'll put all the names up, but like V-tec solenoid boost something or other. Anyways, there's like 4 different things they call this. I'll put all the names up on the screen. But it uses a high pressure oil to actuate the V-tec in these Honda motors. And this little gasket here basically fails and allows it to leak oil. And the problem with that is your alternator's right down there. I'm replacing the alternator on this vehicle, but some other things too. I'll go over that in a second. But this is a very common problem with these. This gasket goes bad and starts leaking all over your alternator, and then it ruins your $300 to $400 alternator on this Honda. We also have a leaking power steering pump here, which I'll be replacing. And then also you got your valve cover gasket here, which we do have leaking on this one. So it's kind of a combination of all three. Usually the worst culprit being that V-tec solenoid gasket there. But we're going to address all three causes here to make sure we're not getting any more leaks on the brand new alternators. The last thing you want to do is replace the alternator. You know, things like $300 or $400 just to have all this crap leaking all over your brand new one, and it's just going to fry the new one too. So we're going to address all three areas. But you'd be hard pressed to find a video on the rear, and that's because usually the rear one, there is one on the back head there. But usually that one's ignored because it doesn't really cause any problems for the back one to be leaking. The front one causes all the issues because it fries these alternators. A lot of times you'll replace this, and these are not Honda parts because I don't think Honda may be making them and selling them now, but at least there for a good while they weren't. They would only sell you the whole unit, which is like $200 for that V-tec solenoid. So I'm not sure if by the time this video posts, if Honda will finally start making these and selling them. I doubt it because they're going to want to sell you the whole part. But being the fact that this is not a Honda brand part, sometimes these screens are a little too restrictive, and when you replace it with this new one that's not a Honda part, it doesn't allow the correct flow of that high pressured oil, and you'll get a code for that. I'll put that up on the screen. So what you're supposed to do is swap out the screen, take the old one out, and put it in the new gasket. So we'll do that in this video. And that system is very sensitive, so you need that screen in there to catch any possible particles and contaminants and whatnot, so it doesn't clog up your V-tec system there, or it may not switch over to V-tec on the higher RPMs. And then of course, like I said, you get the check engine light. Now there's another place lower down in here it can leak, but 90% of the time it's your top gasket here that leaks. So if you wanted to be really preemptive and proactive or what have you, you can replace the entire thing, but that's going to cost you way more than a $15 gasket. Like I said, it's about $200 for the new unit. Also, if you replace one, you're supposed to replace both, so now you're looking at almost $400 just in parts there. And it also requires you to go much further because you actually have to remove the entire solenoid where it runs into the side of the head. You actually have to unbolt the rocker arm retainer / rocker arm assembly, pivot it up slightly so that you can remove the solenoid. And then of course you're moving internal engine components there, so you have to know what you're doing to get it put back together right and not screw up the engine. So for most people, in most cases, you're just going to want to replace that gasket. So yeah, that's kind of it. I'll show it a little bit here and there. It's not really a how-to video. I just kind of want to make an awareness video because when I was trying to research this, I was getting confused between the front solenoid and the rear solenoid, and the gaskets were different, and where it could also, like it, initially they were just saying, oh yeah, replace this and you're good, but then I ended up finding out that further down in there, O-rings and gaskets and whatnot could potentially leak as well. But then, like I said, you're looking at way more money and digging way further into the engine to replace the entire thing. So most people and the customer that is having me do this repair opted to go with just the gasket, so that's what we're doing here today. But yeah, major design flaw on these engines here on the Hondas, and I would have had a list up by now of all the vehicles that run these engines. This is not just the 3.5 liter, but the old 3 liters and 3.2s. The J series engines, they all had that issue there. Alright, so I got a few extra things out because, as I said earlier, I'm doing more on this. I'm replacing the alternator because it's fried due to this leak. I already got my power steering pump out. I'm going to do the valve cover gasket while I'm at it as well. I believe I said that. I'm also doing the rear. And while we have the valve covers off, I'm also checking or setting the valve lash. I might do a separate video on that. But I got pretty much everything out of the way. Everything unclipped here. The wiring harness is loose. So I can get the valve cover out. So it's got plenty of play in it to get this out. So I just got to take out, where are they at here? You got 2 down here, 1, 2 right there. And then I believe this is the 3rd one. And then the top part of this V-tec solenoid or spool valve. And like I said earlier, I already listed the 3 or 4 different names they call this thing. pull it out, and then I can show you where the 2 gaskets are that we'll be replacing. There's 3 bolts out. The topmost one here is longer, the bottom 2 are shorter and the same size. Does not require removing this 4th one here. So there's the spool valve thing there. Now these pins here, you want to be careful. Sometimes they'll come out with this piece, sometimes they'll stay down in there, or if you're unlucky, as you pull it out, it'll half come out with this and then fall on you. So you'll need to make sure you retain these pins here. Be careful, don't lose them down there. If they do fall, you need to find them. So at the very bottom of this piece, you have the 1 gasket. Sorry for the lighting. Then you have a metal plate right here, and then under that plate is the other gasket. Where's this? I gotta pick this thing out. The other gasket's under this plate, the one with the screen in it. Man, mine was really stuck for some reason. I had to very carefully pry around the edge a bunch of times in a bunch of different spots with a flathead screwdriver to get it to break free, because you don't want to bend this thing. So for some reason, mine was really stuck on there. So you want to keep the plate in the same orientation, so I'm going to set it in a manner I know that this is the top, this is the bottom. So that's the plate that goes in between those 2 gaskets. And then, as I said, there's the one with the screen. So you likely have to use a pick like this to get them out, which I did. And now we need to swap these screens over, like I said. And this does just kind of pop out. It sits in a groove there, and you can just kind of work it out. Reason I'm doing this, as I said, I've read where if you use the one it comes with, you could get some check engine codes compared to using the factory one. I mean, they look pretty similar to me, but I can see a difference there. It's there's more of this metal material here and less basket material, so I'll just kind of, might be easier to show you on the new one. I'm gonna have to work with the old one a little, but they'll just pop out. Be careful not to push your finger through it and rip it, but it just kind of sits in a groove in there like that. So swap your old one over to avoid the possibility of getting that code from the new screen being more restrictive than the old one. So don't forget your top one here. You know, use the pick, pull it out. Don't forget the plate goes in between both of them. Get her bolted back up. If I can find the torque specs, I'll throw it in the video by now. But that's how you address that issue there. There's I'll put a link in the description to these gaskets that I used if you're wanting to do this yourself. But like I said, I just wanted to make a little quick video to kind of cover it. You know, you just want a quick answer like I did. I've already done all the research, and there you go. That's how you do it. You want to get this all cleaned up, brake parts cleaner on a rag. Same thing down here to remove all the oil residue and whatnot before you put it back together. That way you'll get a good seal. And I always recommend a good heat cycle or 2. So let the car run at idle until it gets the full operating temperature. Shut it back off, let it cool down completely, you know, several hours depending on your current temperature outside. Then for the second heat cycle, take a nice light easy drive, you know, 55-mile-an-hour roads, 60-mile-an-hour, no faster than that. Drive it lightly, stay out of the throttle, you know, drive like grandma, give it a nice running heat cycle, and then another cool off, and then you should be good to go. Now you could just get it and go and hot rod and whatnot and probably be okay, but I always recommend those 2 heat cycles in that order to ensure that your gaskets are going to fully seat, because basically when this gets hot and the surface is clean, this rubber will kind of like burn and stick to the metal surfaces to create a really good seal. So that's why I recommend doing such in that manner. But that's it. If you like this video, leave me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.